I might invite to join me on stage the Chief Commissioner of the Great Sydney Commission, an urbanist, philanthropist, innovation, investor, she who must be obeyed in this great city of ours. Would you please make welcome Lucy Turnbull. I'll come and join her on stage.
Well done.
Thank you, Lucy. I suppose one thing we want to talk about today, and appropriately here in Bankstown, I think there's two words you're going to start hearing a lot more of in this city, and that's called the Central City. Courtesy of the GSC, there's new nomenclature. How much, when I grew up at Parramatta, you were just a Westie from the western suburbs. Now then you became a citizen of Western Sydney, and now the Western City doesn't even include Parramatta. I've been considered now an inner city snob being in Parramatta. As Gus Gould said before, he doesn't believe Parramatta's even in Western Sydney. So the Western City, broadly defined by the City Deal, the 8 councils from Hawkesbury to Wallandilly in the mountains, and if I get my druthers, Blacktown as well should rightly be part of that Western City and enjoy the livability fund. And so that leaves us with the Central City. So we're going to run through just a couple of slides, give background, and then talk to Lucy of the GSC. And one thing I must say, I know Kevin's here, we're getting things right in this city finally. This city used to be run by the Rum Corps. And for a while it was run by, in more recent times, by the modern incarnation of the Rum Corps, the AHA and publicans. It's been run by Sydney Water for a while. Where the pipes go, so did the population. RMS, the RTA, certainly had their go. We finally realised this city, in its strategic planning, needs to be run properly, centrally, and by a Greater Sydney Commission. And delighted to have Rob Stokes back in the portfolio. Delighted that Lucy's the chair with Sarah, the great Peter Poulet, another former government architect. You're growing like architects in the room, who's the Central River City Commissioner, and is also now taking over the collaboration agreement for Bankstown. So we hope portents to another thing of Bankstown moving formally into the Central City where it firmly should be. But with that, we thought we might run just a couple of slides. I think we can see them down here, Lucy. We might. Oh, wait a sec. They gave me the clicker. They should know I'm a technophile. Oh, coming up after lunch.
No.
That wasn't my fault. There we go.
There we are.
Well, the dialogue within a month's time is going to be, hopefully, with the Premier launching a new major policy document we've got called Stuck in the Middle. I call it the middle child, the Peter Brady, the Jan Brady, the bit that sometimes gets a little forgotten. We have obviously the Eastern Harbour City to the right in blue. We have the Western Parkland City to the left in yellowy green, and we're stuck in the middle in the Central City in red. So this is what we're going to be looking at very strongly with a major paper that talks about the issues facing one of the two cities that we refer to as Greater Western Sydney, the Central City and the Western City, and for which Lucy is particularly close. As he clicks forward and...
Yep.
So what is the Central City? Yeah, technology, it's a dream, I love it. There it is, there's the Central City. So, those LGAs, roughly defined by up to the hills in the north, down to Georges River in the south, Canterbury, Bankstown, Cumberland, Parramatta, Ryde, Burwood, Strathfield, and maybe something else. My eyes aren't good enough for that. So this concept of the Central City that we're talking about on Canada Bay, so obviously at the eastern fringe. These are the LGAs that are very much the central core. You get out of the city, they're largely defined by the GPOP, little Lucy's baby, this concept of this corridor from Westmead to Olympic Park, GPOP. GPOP East-West is, as the Aerotropolis is to the Western City, its northern precinct corridor. We have an East-West one that goes through the city. But there's some elements to it which we've got to remember. It is a range of factors. It's doing economically pretty well. Yet in the last 12 months, unemployment's on the rise in Cumberland and Parramatta, despite the boom economy that is Parramatta, and that's an issue we need to focus on. The Eastern City looks after itself. This is the eastern suburbs, the North Shore, southern beaches, they're fine. They've looked after themselves, they've run the show for that long, they've taken everything for that long, they don't need a lot of help. But the two cities are Western Sydney. The Western City, which has its city deal, etc., is the greenfield city, whereas the central city is the brownfield city. It's the reason we're taking 35 people, many of which in the room, including 2 scholarship recipients, Lakshmi and Andrew Fong, who are with us, who are both going with us as graduate scholars to East London in September to look at the equivalent brownfield city of East London, its transformation over the past 30 years. But we're here to argue the middle child needs a little help. The middle city is being a little left behind. Look at the population of these cities. Eventually, slow growth population. There we go. By 2036, there will be, in the next 18 years, going to be an extra 1.2 million people in Greater Western Sydney. Half of them are coming to the central city. 600,000 extra people will wake up every day and need to find a job close by and recreation close by and education close by. An extra 600,000 people in the next 18 years. That's a massive load to be taken on in this space, so it's very important. Look at some of those issues now in the economy. I jumped one too many back, I'm going back one. By 2019, the community pushed back against density currently. We're talking about a central city that isn't in trouble because, and I hate to admit it, before Cal Asper came along and they reformed the old Canterbury Council, the old Parramatta Council, Ryde Council, Auburn Council, there has been a whole lot of councils, Strathfield Council in our area, which have had some fairly checkered growth and governance in recent years. It's not denied, it's been awful. We want to see this place turn from a cesspit to a bastion of best practice. We need to. So the advantage of trying to get the central city together is very important. But part of the problem with that is the density Bob and Chris spoke about before, is having a population turn against growth, turn against density, because we haven't managed it very well. The core of this is waiting on a major transport line. The Metro West has been in abeyance. I know Brendan Baker's here, it's almost coming. The West Metro, Parramatta Light Rail Stage 1 started, but no decision yet on Stage 2. And we would say we'll come back to some of the major infrastructure we need, talking about some north-south connections, an area that's always denuded for its north-south possibility. So going on to the economy, there we go. 270,000 new jobs by 2036, incredible. The fastest growth in professional services, government, education, training, arts and recreation sectors. 7% are currently attending uni, 10% for the areas surrounding GPOP versus 6% Sydney-wide. So this is a smart core of Sydney, but it's its congested core. Now, it's globally renowned economic anchor at Westmead, the medical hub, where we will cure cancer, we will Nobel Prizes. This is an incredible core backed by a range of Bankstown and Campbelltown, all other parts of the Western City economic, education and medical hubs that are feeding off that Westmead. Strong employment growth in the last year, but some bad signs in Cumberland and Parramatta. It's taken a turn a little bit. And workforce participation is defined by the latte line. Now, if you don't know the latte line, or as I'm starting to call it, the colour-bond fence that goes literally diagonally across, I spoke before. As much as we're all strong advocates of Western Sydney, we need to be realistic that in too many times we're on the wrong side of that line. Per capita, lower income, lower education, higher unemployment. There is, however, higher cultural diversity. Thank God for diversity. We win an award on something. Higher rates of domestic violence, sadly, as our report showed earlier this year. The shameful secret of Western Sydney, we still keep beating up our loved ones more than anywhere else, and we have to stop it. We've got to find a way to stop. Although NAPLAN's not perfect, a below average NAPLAN results in school attendance. I know the Premier's new policies are to try and engage kids much more, and we'll work strongly behind her. And the higher rates of preventable disease and hospital admission. We're the diabetes capital of the country as well. Luckily, we're not the sunburn capital. It's one advantage, the beach suburbs own that, but we really have to do more about that. And we need to address some of those social issues. So, Lucy, just as a backdrop, to describe the... I'll go back on the solutions till the end, go back. So to talk to the Chief Commissioner, and while you are Chief Commissioner of all of Metropolitan Sydney, because of your championing of GPOP, you've had a specific reference, and your Deputy, Jeff Roberts, is formally the Coordinator General of the Western City. As you sit here now, I know there's been, a lot of us haven't seen, particularly Jim Betts before his role in Infrastructure New South Wales, a lot of work below the scene, below the ground, literally, on building the headworks, getting it ready to cope with growth. But since the launch of GPOP with such fanfare a couple of years ago, are we right in saying that there's sort of been this Western city's really grown, the airport, the sexiness of the new airport has driven that? Where do we sit vis-a-vis Central City in your view? Where are we at?
Well, can I just say, you're absolutely right. There is a huge amount of work going on underneath the surface. In GPOP, we are doing, which is still inside the cabinet process, we are doing what we call a place infrastructure compact. And that's actually a very new thing for the state government. It's a new thing globally. Like, I've spoken to people in other large cities, and they think if it works, this will be fabulous. And I hope it does, and I hope it is. But the whole central idea of it is for, at this time in the New South Wales Cabinet process, for all the relevant government agencies, and I have to give Kevin Young, if he's still here, I can't see a single person, by the way, so if I'm looking back, Kevin's over here. A huge plug to the work that Sydney Water's been doing with us, transport planning, health and education, all the multiplicity of other government agencies, because what humans understand their place is, it's just not a question of whether there's a house there, whether there's a tree in the street, as important as those things are if you live in the house. It's actually how long it takes to get to school, how congested it is, what the air quality is like, how long it takes to go to uni, how long it takes to get to work and do whatever you want to do. So we're appreciating that a place is actually a stack, not just of architectural form and design form, but the services and infrastructure that go along with that. So in very high growth areas like the Central City, which we don't think is stuck in the middle, we think it's actually the central unifying heart of Sydney. If we get all those services and those systems aligned with good place and great urban design and developing a circular economy and better water use policies, then we will have one of the most livable and dynamic, exciting places in the world to live and work.
Can we get back to that first slide? I just want to show the three cities again as backdrop, but I can't. It's beyond my clicking capacity, sorry. Pure Luddite. They said even I couldn't bugger up the clicker, but apparently I can. I can defy anyone's low expectation of me. Looking at that there, Lucy, the three cities, we got stuck in the middle. Effectively, Western Sydney doesn't have a congestion problem. To some extent, even the Eastern Harbour doesn't have a congestion problem. Sydney has a big congestion problem, and it's largely in the middle. It's largely the corridor, the Parramatta Road corridor, the Victoria Road corridors, the rail corridor of between Sydney and Parramatta and a bit beyond. And we've had a lot of attention focused on how we manage those east-west. M4 East due to open this month. So very close, which will take to address some of that Central City work. Parramatta Light Rail's underway. Hopefully Metro West will get announced very soon with federal money. It has to achieve. We cannot have a federal government abandon the steel spine of this city. We have to get some federal funding into that. And we've said, say to government, go and sell the rest of WestConnex. We don't care. Sell 49% more, but put it into our train line, our metro rail, and in hopefully getting some better urban amenity around Bankstown with the metro line and maybe on to Liverpool through here. But with that, there's a lot of discussion about the east-west. In reality, I think the Commission certainly discovered, and those who've lived it have known for a while, but you articulated it well, the challenge has been the lack of north-south connections across Sydney.
Yeah.
Now, we championed that outer rail, which is great that the federal government went with that, the north-south rail. But the north-south connections in the middle, we have ambition for the next range of metro to be a Cogra, Bankstown, Parramatta, Epping type metro, and maybe the A3, A6 corridor, the Georges River, Centennial Avenue through Olympic Park, up to Ryde Road, up to Monavale Road, those corridors. We've always had this city that's always direct coming into that to Circular Quay, and it's never been envisaged till you've done the new work that Sydney might move up and down, not only cross-stably.
And I think that north-south movement is critical to the structure plan for Greater Sydney, which is a joint enterprise between Transport, Infrastructure and Planning and the Greater Sydney Commission. And so in this Central City, for example, not only are we projecting to get, in the next 10 years, Metro West, which is really important because it will link Parramatta Westmead much more quickly into the eastern fringe cities, what I call it, but it also, if you can over the next in the following decade, if we can get to a planning, planning an early stage business case for that link from Cogra to Bankstown, where we are now after Parramatta, you will actually have built out, a really strong north-south system for the Central City. But I think that the Parramatta Light Rail is a key to that now, and I think the Metro West is the next key to it. And I think following that, we think about the Kogarah, Bankstown, Parramatta connectivity for the next 20 to 40 years. And that's really important to start thinking about that now. And I can't emphasise this too much. If we are planning for a lot of land use change around, say, Parramatta or Bankstown, if we start to think now about how that line might work, not in a locked-in sort of highly developed business case way, but in a general way, so that we can maintain the optionality for the best transport routes now, even if they're not delivered for 20 years. I mean, the great thing is that there's $93 billion of infrastructure CapEx committed by this government, which has never ever happened before. You could argue that the rollout of the suburban rail network in the early part of the 20th century is analogous, but in terms of the chunkiness of the spend, we've never seen anything like that. A lot of it's transport, because transport's really chunky. There's education, health, roads, everything else. So the good news is a lot of money's being spent. The challenge is that people say, well, if you're doing this and you're doing that, why don't you this and that and that? After a really a somewhat low level of delivery of key city-shaping infrastructure over the last 30 years or so. So we're playing catch-up, but we're projecting into... Sorry?
You get to be the new John Bradfield, effectively, this thing. Now, the new invert and how much we've changed. John Bradfield's now a woman, too, as the development of the city is marvellous. Your vision for the central city, you've articulated a vision for the GPOP core along its central east-west parallel of Westmead to Olympic Park, which we are major fans. We prefer to call it Olympic Corridor, but we hand it over to the Korean pop star name of G-pop. But maybe your vision for the north-south core. How do you see the link? How does, in the future, a kid from Hurstville or Bankstown access a job at Macquarie Park or Norwest? Or similarly, how does Peter Archistrat develop the next major advanced manufacturing business park at Bankstown Airport so the people of Castle Hill can access that for their job?
Well, the great thing is that the metro from Bankstown to basically Rouse Hill is going to mean that kids who grow up here in and around Bankstown train station, railway station, when the metro's going, they can get on the metro and get off at Macquarie Park or get off at Rouse Hill or wherever they want to go in less than half an hour. So if that's not delivering a 30-minute city, I don't know what is. And then, obviously, if it were possible in that next sort of decade after the West Metro is delivered, to think about how to deliver the linkage from Kogarah to here to Parramatta, that's kind of like the next stage of consideration, I think, if we stick to this plan now. And can I just say, one of the challenges with Sydney's planning is there's been, in the last 30 years or so, a lot of, sort of stop, go, and a lack of clarity and consistency about what the overall plan is, and there hasn't been ever very great alignment, and I'm putting it politely, between land use and transport planning. Now we do, and this is the magic of working with transport planning, the government, and Infrastructure New South Wales, is to deliver a spatial plan, but also how you deliver the social infrastructure, the green infrastructure that needs to go with it.
Because, of course, the Great River system is the Central River City, as it's officially called, and the Great Rivers. Kevin Young and I have discussed this many times. We promised that we'll support all government moves to recycling water and convince all of us that we should be, recycling our own water up to whatever tertiary level, as long as we get some support for government to fix the great rivers of Western Sydney, because no matter what great achievement successive governments made making ocean outfalls fixed, so our beaches, our Sydney Harbour, beautiful, recreational, stunning, you can get home from work and have a dip in the water. Try going for, I know there is the Revesby Beach, but try going for different parts of the Cooks River where you've got to navigate your way through breeding shopping trolleys, or Lake Parramatta, which when I was a kid was closed every second week because of algae blooms. We have to have the same commitment to the rivers of the central city as we've had for the harbours and ocean of the eastern city, and that we'll continue on that. We might wake up with solutions if we can, so I'm going to ask Lucy the ultimate question, that last slide. I was going to say, Jeff Roberts, your deputy. He's only your deputy, but he seems getting all the goodies.
I don't think that's fair.
He's got a city deal out there in Western City. He's got federal funding for livability. He's got federal funding for the airport and the roads package and the rail. He's got a investment attraction agency down in Western City and Airport Aerotropolis Alliance. They're all marvellous. We think there's a chance with good governance to emulate what's happening in Western City. So say to government, you sort of gone to the easier one, the lower hanging fruit in the Greenfield City. Now, we'll put you on your medal. Let's try that in the brownfield city. Let's try that with some entrenched issues we said about governance and density and others. We have an ambition, we'll be articulating it more, that many of those things, let's call you maybe the Coordinator General for the Central City, as Jeff is for the Western City. Let's envisage a future for SOPA, that it becomes, rather than just a landlord of Olympic Park, a place manager, marketer, to becoming an investment attraction entity for GPOP. That for every time Jeff's going around the world wonderfully well and bringing all this attraction investment into the wonderful Aerotropolis hub, what are we not doing to bring it to Westmead? What are we not doing it for Bankstown and West Macquarie Park? So how do we emulate that? How do we get that city deal that brings those? If ever councils need to work together, it's the councils of the central city, and it might need to be forced on them. I know people like Parramatta and Bankstown are yelling for it. And those future transport links, the light rail 2, the Metro West, and the future north-south connections. How do we help you make it sexy enough that government says, we're as enamoured of the central city as we obviously are of the western city, and we'll take what's working in the western city and apply it in the central city?
Okay. Well, I think to have a city deal, you need to have, and this is why it worked in Western Sydney. I have to give my husband due credit for actually making it happen. He was the driver of that. The trigger for the Western Sydney city deal was actually the airport, the Badgerys Creek Airport, and the decision to use the Aerotropolis land not for defence housing, but to actually create an employment and an innovation and advanced manufacturing and everything else hub. So that was kind of the trigger that brought the federal government to the table, and a keen desire to coordinate infrastructure delivery and livability and productivity and sustainability into the Western City as they were delivering that infrastructure. So that's what really drove that. The Central City, of course there could be a city deal, but what, can I be honest with you, what, if the federal government wants to drive that, that's fine, but what will the key things that the federal government brings to the table? If it's cash to fund the West Metro, that's great, but it may not need the whole apparatus of a city deal. It really has to be driven by, we do need, cash to pay for the West Metro. That is absolutely critical to the livability and the connectivity of GPOP to the eastern city and beyond as the train lines are built up.
Good question you ask. We would say that if to have city deals require federal standing for the feds to have a role. So, to make the West Metro, that steel spine, a sexier part, because I believe it is, and having been on the committee for the feds and state government that chose Badgerys Creek site and being one of the prime advocates for development of Badgerys Creek, I believe the West Metro has a more transformative impact on this city than the airport will have, and certainly much quicker. We have to make that train line as sexy as the airport is to get the feds in. We need to remind the federal government they own an airport in Central City at Bankstown, and the potential development for that as a long-term asset, in addition to its aviation, reducing aviation needs as that comes along. We've got to remind the federal government that, the opposition took the last campaign, we need the feds to honour it as well. We mentioned before about the multicultural base of Western Sydney. How long can we sustain a national multicultural broadcaster living in Artarmon and not living in Bankstown? I mean, it's a no-brainer. Move SBS out of Artarmon, get it into the central city, get it where multicultural Australia lives, breathes and wants to tell its stories better than it's able to do to go to, at best, monocultural Artarmon, or there's more than one, I'm told, but there's not much. It doesn't do Bankstown for diversity, Artarmon is what I'm saying. So let's get that here. There's a range of federal issues that can be done, I think, that give the federal government standing. But maybe to make this sexy for the state government, how about you and I plan to move Parliament House to Parramatta? Is that going to do the trick? Does that get them focused? We move them to the central city rather than getting the central city to them.
Well,
move it back when Lachlan Macquarie had it.
Yeah, that used to be there, exactly. Well, I think actually Parliament House, to be honest with you, started in Macquarie Street. Let's be honest about that, Chris. But there's no reason that it couldn't sit part of the time in the central city. Just as that is possible. But even if that we don't quite get there, the great news is that there's so much employment growth in the Parramatta CBD, and will continue to be. All these government agencies like planning's about to move there. NAB, as one of the previous speakers said, the two big offices in Sydney, one is in the CBD and the other one's in Parramatta. And all these other businesses and agencies thinking that way. So I think, the central city's employment prospects are really fantastic. And I think we also need to bear in mind that at the moment, this may not be the case in 10 years, but at the moment, only 37% of the jobs in the central city are actually in strategic centres. So this is to me quite fascinating. A lot of the jobs in the central city are in the industrial lands, in urban services lands, in schools, maybe Bankstown Airport's not a strategic centre, hospitals, etc. They're not in what are identified in the planning system as strategic centres. That's why when we were doing our plans, we were very keen to identify health and education innovation precincts as key bits of social and economic infrastructure, and to plan for the success of those spatially and operationally. And they need to have certainty around the ability to prosper and grow as time goes on and the population changes.
You've been very clear with your vision for the Parramatta Court and Greater Parramatta. A couple of others. Bankstown, we're here today. Bankstown's happening today. My God, if you're not in Bankstown, you are nowhere today. There's the state government and Amanda Larkin's here from South West Sydney Health, the $1.3 billion woman who's been given that for the new hospital downtown in Bankstown. Western Sydney Uni, we're here from Barney Glover at the moment after lunch up here, talking about the showcase of the most amazing building that's on page 2 of our Best of the West, the new building for Bankstown. Centro, who's developing, has a shopping centre, has twice the footprint it probably needs for a redeveloped shopping centre. And we all hope a metro to Bankstown which can add to its urban amenity, not detract from it. We're going to find a way. I think, I won't verbal anyone, but somebody senior in government said, you won the argument, yep, we should bury that train line. That's the good news. Bad news, we've got no money to do it, so we can't do it. So we're going to try and find a solution that gets a better urban outcome. Bankstown, Olympic Park, Balcombe Hills, they're an unlikely Herstal, an unlikely gathering. But do Ride?
Yeah.
And do you have a vision for how, does it become a contiguous city? Do the cities have to all be holding hands and follow the same footy team? Or is there a sense that there'll be diversity within a city? Yes.
I think that's pretty unlikely. But they, you need to think about it as part of a social and economic system, and that's why the north-south links are really important. So, if you're talking about the latte line, a lot of the jobs and a lot of the knowledge workers, a lot of the, the more advantaged parts of Sydney are actually on the other side of the Parramatta River. So that's one of the reasons that you've got to bring the north-south connections down this way, so that people living in Bankstown can easily get to a job in Parramatta or Norwest or or Ryde or wherever they wanted to work, without always having to go around through the eastern city, because that will speed up their travel time, and it will also feed into a perception and a reality of being able to connect into employment markets right through the centre.
And Olympic Park with a new convention centre over the RAS, with a stadium that will, in the right configuration for rectangular footy and for growth of commercial and educational assets again in Olympic Park, not only the tourism future and beyond. So you're going to, in closing, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to hear a lot more about the central city in the next little while. The Western City's been tremendous, and we feel a little jealous of what they've got. We don't take it off them, we want to emulate it. This is a remarkable model of governance done really well. Federal and state and local governments, to their credit, have come together and are driving that Western City, the Greenfield City, remarkably well. We just want to drag some of that success, a little east across the border into the central city. GPOL was its core, but with north-south ambition, and part of it, the great cross that will be the central city. And I think we have a Chief Commissioner who shares that ambition. We have a District Commissioner, Peter Poulet, down there, who, let's officially give him Bankstown. We'll make it easier. Just let's formalise it. Kick Black down to Liz. Peter gets Bankstown. Everybody's happy. Because it's the dirty little secret of GSC. Jeff said to me once, never ask us on hard lines of where the central city is. And I haven't asked you that question. We're just defining it ourselves, not to do that. But as the process goes forward, we all need to focus on this central city. Give it identity. Give it a sense that it probably, if it's an artificial construct, we have to work much harder to make that a living, breathing part of your three-city plan.
And can I say, one of the most important things about these cities is, like the theatre we're sitting in now, this is a fantastic cultural piece of machinery, social and cultural machinery. In Blacktown there's about to be an amazing new one at the Coliseum Theatre, and when the Riverside Theatre is rebirthed and the Powerhouse is rebirthed, I mean, in this central city will have, depending on how you characterise Blacktown, but assuming you can bring it into that equation, the most extraordinary cultural assets for the benefit of everybody in the central city and the people on either side of this central city that want to come and enjoy themselves.
My closing to say, you presented me, I got a copy of your book years ago, the book on Sydney. We always don't mention it in the original book, Lucy, as a young urbanist. I think Western Suburbs started at Balmain, which I love, going further. But let me present it with our book on Sydney, The Best of the West, produced by Adam and Faith and the team at the Dialogue, which you'll get a chance to open up. You don't get a hard copy yet until we get somebody to help us pay print some more, but you can all get it online. But Lucy does, and thank you for your support of Western Sydney particularly, Central Sydney specifically, and making us give us the sort of direction we finally have with GSC as the thing we have to obey.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lucy.